Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing today? So this is going to be my first overhead video. I'm pretty excited about it because I really wanted to film this dupe video for y'all and my eyes are hurting today. So I'm wearing my glasses, I didn't feel like putting makeup on, and I bought a tripod so that I can do videos like this. So I hope you're excited to see more. I figure this will be really good for swatching and doing different collections and different dupes as well. So today we are going to be duping the new Natasha Denona Trichrome Palette. It was just revealed yesterday and I thought it was really beautiful, but it's also $129. I'm just not in a place to spend $130 on an eyeshadow palette right now. And when I broke it down, it was actually quite dupable, so I'm really happy with how this went. I also just wanted to say that this video, the purpose is that if you are interested in the palette, it can kind of break down each shade and really make you think about each one. That's what duping really helps me do. It can also help you if you're just looking at one or two shades in the palette instead of spending all the money for the entire thing. These are going to be some alternatives that you could purchase and just get what you're really interested in. And also, of course, majority of the time when I dupe an entire palette, it would be less expensive to buy the palette than it would be to buy every single dupe. But I hope that you can be inspired to shop your own stash just to see if you have similar shades to kind of help keep the FOMO at bay. So I'm going to go ahead and show you my palette. I feel kind of weird. I'm not sure if I should show it this way or this way. According to how I'm looking at my monitor, I guess I should do it this way, right? Even though it's backwards for me. So I have my shades in this little Igneous Cosmetics palette they sent me forever ago. I don't think that they sell it anymore, but it has the little cats. I love cats. Here is what my version of the palette looks like. And the interesting thing about this palette is that it's almost all mattes. All the shades on this side, all the shades on this side are all mattes. And then the real star of the show is the three multi-chrome or trichrome shades in the middle. For me, I feel like that's really what would stop me from purchasing the palette, is just that all of these shades, the mattes, are pretty basic. I mean, they're cute little pops and I like them together. Like, I like the color story, but they're pretty basic shades. It's just the middle that really stands out. And for me, if I'm going to buy a $130 Natasha Denona palette, I want to have a lot of shimmer options because I love her shimmers. So to just have three, it just isn't worth it for me. So I'm going to go ahead and swatch them all one by one, but I also did want to show you that I have some extra shades here. You can see I didn't put them in the palette to begin with, but I also wanted to include some different alternatives for the multi-chromes because it's really hard to see multi-chromes from pictures. And I looked at three different pictures, two different ones of the palette, one of swatches, and I tried to do the best that I could, but I wanted to give you some extra alternatives. So I'll go through and swatch those as we go as well. But the ones here are the ones that I felt were like the closest that I could possibly tell. Obviously, I only looked at pictures. I don't have the palette, unfortunately. So let's just go ahead and start. So the first shade on the very top row is this beautiful green shade. I love a nice deep olivey green. This one is called Scarp in the palette, but I am using Fossick from Divina, and it's just a really beautiful pigmented green. Go ahead and swatch that. So you can see it's very pigmented and it basically gives the same effect. So the next shade in the palette is a very light minty shade. It's called Androdite, and honestly it looks like a white based matte with just the tiniest bit of mint. So the closest that I could come to that is this shade from Divina called London Fog, but I thought it would be pretty similar. It has a little bit more gray, but I thought that overall in the eyes it would actually probably be a little bit more versatile. Also, this shade here called Seafoam from Coastal Scents, which is a little bit closer. It has more of a white base to it, but it has like the tiniest little bit of satinness to it. I wouldn't call it a complete true matte, but that one also could give you a similar look if you want something a little bit lighter. But I don't think that that's going to show up that amazingly on all skin tones. It's a very pale pastel. Okay, so coming up on the first trichrome here, this one is called Scarab, and there's actually a shade called Scarab from Natasha Denona that exists already. It's a liquid multi-chrome. I do own it. I don't think it's really relevant to this conversation right now because that one looks different than the swatch here. The swatch doesn't even look like a multi-chrome. It just looks like a really deep green with a gold shift to it. So I went ahead and grabbed two different deep greens with gold shifts. This one is the one I thought was the most similar, but it's more of just like a plain duochrome. It's not a multi-chrome. It's the shade Evergreen by Cosmetics. It's a super beautiful color. See the shine? And it has that green base with a gold shift to it. I don't know if you can kind of see the base more as I like turn. See the green? And then the gold is more just like kind of scattered throughout. So I had a kind of a hard time duping this just because I feel like the multi-chromes that I have with green and gold are more intense and they're more different shades, not just green and gold. So I was kind of struggling with this one, but I also have this shade called Avocado, which is another beautiful greeny gold from Cosmetics. You can see the difference there. This one's a little bit more like yellowy gold. So that's another option. But again, I don't think those are like that impressive as far as multi-chrome shadows go. I just think those are more just like regular shadows. So I pulled out two different multi-chromes that I have, which have green and gold, but they also have blue. These remind me of Scarab more, but they also have a black base to them. So this one is called Exosphere from Davina. You can see the green and the teal kind of shifting. So beautiful. Look at that. Okay, I really like swatching like this. This is actually quite fun. Ooh, look at that. You can see the shift so well. See how beautiful that shade is? So if you're looking for an amazing multi-chrome and you don't want to pay so much, that one's a really good option. And then the other one is one of my favorite shades. This is Mood Ring from Terra Moons. You can see right there. I've mentioned this quite a few times. Okay, we've got one finger left. Okay, I kind of am being a little messy right now, but there's what that one looks like. I feel like it has a little bit of a deeper base than the Davina one, but the shift is really, really beautiful as well. They're quite similar. I don't think you would need to own both of them. Okay, so the next shade in the row looks to be a really beautiful kind of bright green. In the palette, it looks more pastel. In the swatches, it looks so much brighter. I would say the same for both of these shades. They look so much brighter in the swatches than in the palette, but I just went with the swatches, and I think that these options are really, really fun. I didn't want to do a super muted palette, but anyway, so the bright green that I went with is called Algae from Igneous Cosmetics. Look at that. It's a really, really beautiful bright green. I feel like they've changed their matte formula since I've gotten this, but I think that's a fun option. And then the other one is another green yellowy shade, but it looks a little bit more grungy. It's the shade Vert. And this is actually from a brand called Igneous Cosmetics. It's the shade Pear. They're a Canadian small indie brand. I don't hear people talk about them that often. I've only tried just a handful of their shadows, but this is one of the coolest shades. It's such a pretty yellowy green. So there's what that looks like. They might be a little tiny bit less pastel than the ones in the Natasha palette, but I think that this little section is super fun. Okay, so next we have a really beautiful purple row, and it starts off with a very light purpley pink matte shade, and in the palette it's called Naga. I have the shade Howlin from ColourPop, and I got this quite a long time ago, so I very much doubt that it's still available, but it was the closest shade that I personally had, and the pigmentation's not the best. It has a little bit of hard pan, but I think that it would work just fine on the eyes. Okay, next we have the deepest purple in the palette, which looks to be like a blackened purple. The closest thing that I could really find is this shade Desma from Davina. It swatches a little bit darker than it looks in the pan, but I think it's a really pretty option. So there's what that one looks like. Super smooth and pigmented. Might be a little bit less purple and a little bit more mauve-y than in the palette, but again, we're just duping, we're doing alternatives. It doesn't have to be perfect, the whole point is for me to not be tempted to spend $129, and it worked perfectly. So next we have the most beautiful shade. So this one is a purpley blue, and it is called Kinetic in the palette. And it looks to be just like a deep purple base with a purple blue shift. And I feel like I wish that I had more swatches of this. I guess that's what I get for doing this video early. So I have this one here, which is one of my favorite purple blue shadows. And then I also have a bunch of other versions of purple blues that will give you different purple undertones. This one is the shade Moontide from Terra Moons. You're not ready. You are not ready. And it has a really strong blue shift to it. So I thought that this would be perfect. I don't know if you can see on camera how strong the blue is. It is one of my favorite shades ever. Look at that shade. Has a deeper purple base and a blue shift, so I think that would be very, very similar. I love the texture of it. It's such a pretty shade. Like, look at that. Okay, so here's one of the purple blue shifts that I also wanted to mention. This is Anomaly from JD Glow Cosmetics. One I would say is more of just another duochrome, but it has that purple base and the blue shift, so I think it would be very similar on the eyes. And then I have this one, which is stunning. I don't like to recommend Clionadh as much in dupe videos unless I have to, because they are closed right now. They do a bunch of pre-orders. I know the waiting time is a lot longer, so it's just not as accessible. But I did want to mention this purple blue shade, just throw it in here. This is the shade Royalty. I believe that this was one of their vibrant multi-chromes. Again, look at that. The blue shift is so strong. I feel like it's not even showing up on camera how strong it is. It just looks purple, but the blue is there, I promise. Let me see, right here. Wow, I feel personally attacked by it not showing how blue it is. But that's a really, really beautiful option as well. And then I also chose one more. This is Divina Skyla. It's another purple blue, but this one has more of a berry base to it. You can see when I turn it away from the light, you can see this one has quite a dip in it too. I really love this shade. But it does have that blue shift, so I wanted to mention it as just a different tone. It's a little bit more berry than just bright purple. So there's some different options for that multi-chrome. I'm such a mess. Okay, I'm throwing this clip in. It's probably going to feel out of place, and I apologize. I'm a mess. I was editing my video and I realized I forgot to swatch two of the shades that I duped. I don't know why I'm like this. I guess I just saw all the beautiful multi-chromy purples and just kept going. So I wanted to swatch these two shades really quickly, and I'm sorry that they won't be included in the swatches of the entire dupe. But the next shade in the palette from Natasha Denona looked to be like a kind of gray with just the tiniest tint of purple. So I went ahead and chose Frisson from Divina. So we'll just swatch that for you real quick right here. You can see it's a really nice cool tone with just the tiniest hint of purple. And then the next shade is kind of like a plummy purpley tone, more on the muted side, but it's a really nice shade. This is Mauve Velvet from M Cosmetics. So there's what that one looks like. Once again, I apologize for being scatterbrained. I'm so sorry. And then on to the last row, which is a little bit more neutral. The very first shade is called, gosh, that says Vertex, and it just looks like a pale white shade. I have the shade So Pale from Makeup Geek. I don't have a lot of colors like this, honestly. I don't really see a point in having a lot of colors like this, and I kind of feel like it's a waste in a palette. But there is my version. And then next we have a really beautiful, bright, kind of yellowy orange. I struggled to dupe this one. I feel like I always struggle with the neutrals, but this is the shade Plutonium. Oh man, okay. And I went ahead and duped it with the shade Anastasia or Anastasia from Divina, which is a yellowy orange. So there's what that looks like. So this last multi-chrome here I feel like was pretty easy to dupe. It's the shade Color Flip, and it's kind of your typical like green, orange, purple shifting shade. At least it looks like from the swatches. And from what I saw in the palette, it also looks like this one does have a black base, which made it that much even easier to dupe. So I went ahead and chose 2 different shades that I feel are pretty good comparisons for it. One is a little bit more metallic, one's a little bit more textured and sparkly, so either one could be a good alternative. This is the shade Nova from Tracy's Powder Room. This one is super, super sparkly. Look at that. Do you see the shift at all? I feel like you can't see the shift. Okay, we'll work on that in a second. All right, so here's what that one looks like. I can see the shift from where I'm sitting. I feel like that looks very similar to the pictures that I've seen. And then I also have this shade from Divina, which is called Australis. You literally can't say this name without an Australian accent. Like, it's written in the disclaimers when you purchase it. Just kidding. But here's what that one looks like. So again, it has the same exact shift that apparently doesn't want to show right now. There we go. Look at me. So apparently if I get closer to the camera, I know it's not in focus, but you can see the shift a little bit more right there. See that? Okay, so we're going to finish off with 2 more neutral shades. Let me move that out of the way. We have this one, which shade is called Garmin in the palette, but this is the shade Chic Happens from ColourPop. This might have been a collaboration with I Love Sarah E back in the day, like forever ago. But it's kind of just like a mauve neutrally tone. I just thought it looked similar. Swatch right here. And then there's one more lighter neutral tone left, and this is the shade On the Nude from M Cosmetics. I know it looks very, very pale in the pan, but this actually swatches a little bit darker. I'm comparing this to the shade Diatonic from the Natasha palette. Okay, so there's what that looks like. But you can see there's all the shades together. I think they look really, really beautiful. So I'm really excited to play with this little palette more and to just get some looks out of it, shop my stash, and to just not end up buying the other palette just because it's a lot of money. Not that I've never spent that much on a palette before, but today's not the day. That's everything. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know if you liked the overhead video and if there's any more videos you'd like to see like this. Just any suggestions I'm definitely open to. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!